Yup, it's a dart. Well, it's got some character, that's for sure. Sounds nice. It's missing a couple things. We gotta build a dart, Morty. It's gonna be a cheap driver, Morty. It's gonna be awesome, Morty. Cookie. Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is Allan's 1968 Dodge Dart sedan, affectionately known as Lil Bit. It's got a little bit of stuff going on, that's for sure. Allan is one of the Dead Dodge Garage Gold members. He lives about 15 minutes away in Montesano, Washington. He's never really been a hardcore Mopar guy, but I think thanks to my bad influence, he recently bought a couple. One was a 1966 Fury, which had a 360 under the hood, and then he bought this. I'm sure it's immediately obvious that the 68 Dart sedan has seen some things. It actually started out much worse than this. Allan had to straighten the radiator support, the hood, that quarter panel, this fender. He's done a lot of work to get it where it is. I've been seeing various pictures and videos as this car has come together on our Dead Dodge Garage Discord channel, so it's pretty exciting to see it in person, alive, and doing cool car stuff. You will have likely noticed that this car has a couple extra doors, 4 doors in total, which is twice as many as the cars we usually get excited about. But I actually think that's kind of cool. For one thing, it was cheap. So cheap. If you've been in a coma or living under a rock for the last 5 years, then you may not know that desirable muscle-era A-body Mopars are now trading for tens of thousands of dollars. A 68 Dart 2-door? That is a pretty desirable car. But tacking on those 2 extra doors instantly transforms this thing to reliable family transport. It has no sporting pretensions. It doesn't want to be a muscle car. But mechanically speaking, it's exactly the same car. And hey, the view from the driver's seat, also exactly the same as a 2-door, except for the cool GTS ones with the lumps on the hood. I have always been fond of 1968 Chrysler products in particular. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It's that. Those same excellent round side markers are found on everything from a cheapo Dart sedan to a 68 Charger. We actually have one more of these in stock right now, but we'll talk about this in a future video. The 68 Dart has long been one of my favorites. Although I have to admit, after owning a 70 for some years, I kind of like those a little bit better. Kinda. Now, I'm sure this will be obvious, but this is a work in progress. There's a lot of stuff left to do. A grill and bumper would be a big help. It just got tires like 3 or 4 days ago, and it just got exhaust today. Allan says it may well get painted someday, but for now, it's wearing the patina, which I'm sure at least a few of you will be annoyed by. Best Dodge emblem. Anywho, you're liable to look at a car like this and just automatically assume there's a slant 6 under the hood. And if it were still in factory condition, well, you'd be right. However, Allan's been busy, and under this crinkled hood now, 360 V8. Now, if you're curious what it takes to put a small block like this in place of a slant 6, you can check out my video on the subject. Allan did several times as he was doing this job. The main ingredients are this Smog-era 360 and a 727 Torque Fight automatic, which were removed from the aforementioned 66 Fury. The engine mounts are trans-dapped pieces. The manifolds are from a 318 Dart. This crossflow radiator was also in that Fury, and now it's bolted in here. It looks a little goofy, but it works. There's a fresh voltage regulator because it was massively overcharging, a fresh brake master cylinder, all kinds of nice things. I actually supplied these valve covers. They're from a 68 273? 67 273? I don't remember. Anyway, Allan cleaned them up and painted them blue. Under this thankfully not chrome Edelbrock Performance Air Cleaner, there's my favorite carburetor, an AVS2. It is essentially exactly as it came in the box, and that's one of the things we're going to get to in a bit here. The ignition system is aggressively basic. Standard single points. Nice. Ooh, fender tag. It's disintegrating, and of course it's the 68 and older type that makes no sense. Oh, the factory firewall runs really light on this one. It's more of a firewall sag. Oh, here's a run. I don't actually know what this color is. Is this B3? No, actually it's U1. Not familiar with that one. Early color codes are weird. Anyway, this car is here with me today because it needs the magic tune-up. Allan said he'd love if I could give this a once-over, and I'm happy to do that. There is one minor issue I want to check out before I actually start this thing. We've got an exhaust leak from this rear section of the exhaust manifold gasket. Either those little individual ends are flipped end for end or upside down or something like that, or we have some sort of horrible mating problem. But yeah, there was a noticeable leak there. It was only obvious after the thing got new exhaust pipes. I think it's a 2 1/4 system with old school turbo mufflers. It has a great sound, which we'll hear soon. I've got the manifold loose, and it turns out it's kind of what I thought. This is an LA A-body driver's side manifold. It's designed to fit on a 318, and it does not allow for that chunk of the head casting on the Smog 360 head. This is something I've run into in the past several times, most recently on my friend Mike's 64 Dart GT with the Magnum engine. What I ended up doing ultimately was putting in a Remflex gasket and cutting it right here to alleviate the interference issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on this. Hopefully I don't have to do any grinding, but we'll see. Oh, I heard a reverse gear. You saw a 68 Dart. This guy's very jealous. Anyway, that should work, I hope. Yeah, here's the leak. It was not small. It sounded terrible. It's only just occurred to me. I have done this twice, but both times with the early A-body driver's side manifold. So just something to keep in mind. If you've got 360 Smog heads, this later A-body manifold has exactly the same problem. Installed, but is it fixed? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, before I fire this thing up, no tuning has been done. Allan threw this together to get it movable. The carburetor's hardly been touched. He just tweaked the speed somewhat, and the timing is a totally random guess. Number 1 was roughly lined up, and it started. But I'll tell you right now, it's late. So it's gonna sound kind of gutless. Very much looking forward to fixing that. A working dome light? Ridiculous. Come on, no broken tractor sound? Oh, it's fixed. Not bad, right? Oh. There's an exhaust leak on this side. Okay, so there's a slight leak at number 2. I think it's from the bottom. Again, these are Smog heads, and Allan welded up the holes, so that one might need a little bit of attention. Oh, notice this is a Magnum manifold over here on the passenger side. Anyway, the big one's fixed, so I'm calling it good on that for now. Anyway, notice this thing is just kind of lazy. You can hear that? And then as soon as the advance comes in, let's put a timing gun on this and see what we got. This car does have some rust, specifically in the trunk, although also over here. But a lot of it is really good. Look at these floors. Other than that driver's front, of course. This sounds kind of tractor-y. This is supposed to be an RV cam. Incidentally, Allan doesn't actually own a timing light. He did, but he gave it to me for some reason, so maybe we'll test this one out on his car. Wow, it works. Oh, note, of course, because this is late car stuff, the lower rad hose is on that side, and the timing tab is on this side. If this was factory 68 stuff, it wouldn't be like that. Okay, again, I can't stress this enough. This was a random timing stab to get it running. You probably won't be able to see this, but it's currently at 10 degrees after. Okay. Hey, there you go. Oh, it likes the advance. Let's see where that is. It probably won't end up with that much, but it does like it. Oh. Okay. Yeah, that's too much. 21 degrees. As you can hear, it's still humming. And it sounds like that. Also, I really like how the whole car moves when the engine revs. Those are brand new mounts. This sucker makes some torque. It was still on cold idle that whole time. Notice also this door is not opening. Oh yeah, I forgot. The choke isn't wired yet. That'll fix that. The vacuum pull-off works, that's the good news. Dude. This thing is gonna be fun. Notice I start with timing, then I'll go ahead and check things on the carburetor. Oh! Okay. Okay. She's a little rich. She's a lot of rich. Wow. I guess we're going for one turn. That's interesting. Screwdriver's too long. Oh, now we need to adjust the cable. Anytime you adjust idle screws, give it a rev and then check them again. Wow, it still wants less. I've talked about this before. I've seen a couple Edelbrocks that do this. Not exactly sure why, but half to 3/4 turn is really all it wants. That should be 1.5 to 2.5 turns out from lightly seated. Now that it's idled down, it's actually only 7 degrees of timing. Wow. This thing has a 32-degree spread in the distributor. That's kind of nuts. I have to say, at 7 degrees, it's still pretty happy. I dialed the total timing in at 36 degrees and still a little lazy off idle. Nothing like when it got here, but a little. What? It needs a recurve anyway. 32 degrees, that's just ridiculous. So we'll be getting into that. Yeah. This is Fog City. When the Advance comes in, it's great. Did you know that 1968 A-bodies are the only ones that have these lower dash pads? They're great for collecting spare points and toy dinosaurs and things like that. Anyway, recurving the distributor is a tomorrow Jamie problem. Look at all of that flavor and the Dead Dodge Garage sticker in the correct location. But this cloudy paint, just awesome. And the little bit of shiny rust or red primer or whatever that is, I really dig it. Man, I love blue Mopars. Anyway, it's the next day. I'm gonna pull that distributor out and we're gonna do another recurve. Yay. While I'm doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and correct the distributor position. Notice this vacuum pod is like jamming the hose into the manifold right now. Well, I happen to notice number 1 is marked on the cap, but it's actually here. So what I'm gonna do is jump these wires back to the positions that were marked, and then I'll twist to the distributor that way an entire wire's worth. That will get the vacuum hose off of the manifold. So if you notice, number 1 wire is coming right here currently. Usually it would be over in this area, and the pod would be facing that way. It really doesn't matter which way you face the distributor, which way you stab in that drive gear underneath the distributor, as long as the rotor is pointing at number 1 wire at TDC. You can set the wires essentially any way you want. Usually I do go for factory-ish, which puts number 1 here, and again, the vacuum pod like that way. Oh, why? Why? If you don't know, this is bad. This is never supposed to happen. Neither of these things is supposed to happen. Thing 1, this distributor is jammed solid in that shaft. Thing 2, that is the bushing for the oil pump drive / distributor drive shaft, and it is jammed on there. That came out with 0 effort. I want you to understand that. That piece is supposed to be pressed in the block. There's also a bunch of horrible silver paste here and on the flat gasket, which this thing doesn't actually need. Might be never sees. Yeah, I'm guessing it's never sees. Mopars don't usually have seizing distributor problems. That's more of a Ford thing, but it has been known to happen. Okay, distributor is out of the intermediate shaft. It wasn't jammed that hard, but you know, it was a pretty tight fit. Note the bushing is still on here. It's not stuck, but it can't be removed easily. Now what happens there is a bunch of crap builds up on the shaft, you know, carbon over the years, and it jams the shaft and prevents it from being removed from that bushing. I've had this problem a good few times. I'll end up spinning these with a flathead screwdriver and slowly, carefully working them out. In all the times I've had to do that, I've never had one bring this bushing along for the ride. And that's just crazy. Well, here's how I'm solving this super fun side quest. You can get these bushings. I don't have any in stock. I was thinking about trying to knock one out of another block, but I honestly don't know if I could do that successfully. The important surface in here, the one that the shaft rides in, and this top thrust surface, you know, they both look okay. I'm not too concerned about that. I just need it to stay put in the block. So I staked this like a bearing race, and I'm gonna drive it back in there. And as long as it grabs and holds, I'm comfortable with that. I've cleaned, kind of polished this up with some really fine steel wool. Haven't even lubricated this yet, but it spins nicely. Everything works pretty well, so I think we're gonna be fine. I will tell you, when I staked this, I put something inside of it to try and keep from deforming it, and that seems to have worked. Now I just have to get it in there without dropping it, losing it. I don't know if I mentioned this. I've never seen this happen before, ever, in one of these engines, so hopefully you don't run into this. It could be way worse, honestly. There's what the hole looks like when it's missing the bushing. That's not good. Steady. Okay. I need more hands. Hey, it pretty much drove right in there. It wasn't too loose. It wasn't too tight. It seems to have a good press on it. I really don't know what the deal is. Either I staked it to perfection, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't in the hole at all? Just a thought. Also, you may have noticed that bushing was aluminum. I'm used to seeing these in bronze, like this one in my 273. I dropped the oil pump drive / intermediate gear in with a random stab, and it just so happens to twist the distributor to the correct factory position. So I guess I'm gonna do that. Also, I tried extracting it with a large flathead, which is what I usually do, and it doesn't want to come back out. So I'm just gonna call it good. It went in easy enough. Again, I'm not concerned or anything. As I've done on the channel many times before, I'm going to take this distributor apart and weld up one of the slots in the advance plate, thereby limiting the advance curve. This thing seemed to have like 32 degrees in it, or even more. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going through the distributor and making sure it's good, just kind of baselining it, blueprinting it, whatever, making sure it works. I've found 4 problems so far. Problem number 1, this strap was rusted solid and bent. Now I've fixed it already with some PB and some beading and some careful plier work, so that should actually clip the cap in place. I may need to bend it down a little bit more, but that's okay. Problem number 2, this tang locates the distributor cap, and as you can see, it's bent out. It's bent out so far, it doesn't even come close to touching the slot in the cap, so that does nothing, and the cap's able to move around freely. I'm gonna fix that, obviously. That problem may have led to problem number 3, a totally ruined rotor. If someone dropped the cap on there, they may have been able to snap these straps on without having it locked fully down on the body, because this strap was messed up and because that tang was out of the way. So I'm gonna go find a random rotor for my collection. Finally, and least surprisingly, this vacuum advance pod, which has been rebuilt already, as you can tell by this extra pieces crimped on it, it doesn't work. I'm gonna go look for one that's good in my collection. I do have to pull it off anyway to get this thing apart, so I guess that's fine. Oh, this is so much easier on a points distributor. Now, of course, this may not stay in this car forever, but for now, it should work pretty well. Notice, the slots on this one are angled. The more angle you see in those slots, the more advanced they seem to yield, and I think that's because they're in the direction of rotation, something like that. Anyway, it's approximately the same size slot as a normal distributor, but it just has so much more advanced somehow, and I think it's that angle that does it. As usual, what I'm gonna do is measure out about half of the gap between the pin and the end there, and then weld that up. So we'll have a little bit of movement. Ideally, with this car, I think a 15, 16 degree spread would be great. We definitely don't need it like locked solid. It's a pretty mild cam. I didn't have to touch the main guts of the points distributor at all. Everything else is still together. On the electronic type, you have to remove everything to get to that point. I found a good small block vacuum module, but it's on an electronic distributor, and you cannot use that on a points distributor. You can go the other way. You can use the points type with its different arm that shoots outward on an electronic distributor. Notice that outer hole right there, but the factory one goes into an inner hole under the pickup, which you can't see, and the points advance plate does not have that hole. It only has, if I can find it, the one hole at the outside. Yeah, there you go. So that's a problem. Gonna have to keep digging. Here's the ruined Eklund rotor next to a fancy nameless rotor that I pulled off some other distributor. Note, it is not smashed and ruined, although it was slightly tweaked and I had to straighten that out too. I don't have a new one in stock, so this will be fine. I actually found 2 good ones. Nice. I take that back. This one's only almost good. Remember, kids, it pays to hoard. There you go. Welded up, ground flat, ground with a round file to get something that looks like the right amount of timing. You can see on this side roughly the amount that I closed off. Oh, also the little lubricating felt was missing, so I grabbed one of those, and I even lubricated it. Last problem, points gap was way too small. I opened it up to the spec, which is 16 thou. Of course, you're supposed to verify that with a dwell meter. I don't actually have one that works. I have one that does something, but it's inaccurate, so I never end up testing that. If it runs great, I'm gonna say it's probably good enough. Distributor is back in now. That's my best guess on where it needs to be, judging by the rotor position, so it's not exactly factory, but should work just fine. Let's see how close the timing is. Oh, I didn't connect the points wire yet. Yeah, close. There's my random eyeball with no vacuum advance, which actually does work now. I went for 36 total, which, in case you were wondering, as some people do, is a complete guess based on compression ratio, camshaft, engine size. Complete guess. It's probably close though. Usually you're going to be going somewhere between 32 and 38 for a street engine like this. That puts our base timing at 20 degrees. So we got a 16-degree curve. Nice. That's almost exactly what I wanted. I'm going to tweak the mixtures again and then reset the idle speed. And obviously I'm going to reconnect the vacuum advance. But listen to this thing now. That is peppy. I dropped the idle speed and it wanted an extra quarter turnout on the mixtures. When I went in this time, it actually did stumble and die. So that's good, I think. Anyway. Awesome. This is going to be great. Yeah, so it runs awesome. Throttle's fixed. Oh, I need to adjust the kickdown. He actually put a cable kit on this and it's not tight enough. So we'll do that real fast. Pop the air cleaner back on there and take it for a test run, I guess. This 360 is supposed to have an RV cam in it. Notice it doesn't sound like a crazy dragster or like a Harley or the intro to Hot for Teacher. It sounds pretty smooth and nice, but the throttle response is super crisp. I bet you this is going to be an awesome street performer. There was a very slight hesitation when it was first coming off idle when I would really stab the throttle. I may need to tweak the pump settings a little bit, the accelerator pump, and I probably should at least glance at the needles and springs, I suppose. In general, though, I think it's going to be really close, right out of the box. Here's another trick I've shown on video before, although it's been a long time. These AVS2s are just kind of the best. They've got modern boosters, and excellent fuel settings right out of the box. One of the other nice features is the air door over the secondaries. One thing you can do is adjust these. Essentially what you can do here is dial out any possible bog when the secondaries slam open by tightening the setting on this door so it delays its opening just a little bit. All you have to do is hold this with a flathead screwdriver, loosen this with a Torx, turn this slightly that way, I think, whichever way tightens the spring, and then snug the Torx down again. All you want is just that little bit of resistance on the door. This one's just a hair too loose. Yeah, feels about right. Could even go a bit more. You don't want to get carried away with that or anything. That little change and adjusting the choke, those are two things that often need to be done on these Edelbrocks. Otherwise, they're usually pretty good. And the choke thing, if you don't remember this from a previous video, that white mark generally should line up in the center of this little gauge dealy bob. If you've got an old Edelbrock, that's probably where it's going to be. But on these newer ones, for whatever reason, the way they're made, you need to back it up here a few tick marks, as this one already is. Otherwise, the choke may never fully open, and what can happen in some cases, it'll hang up on the cold idle. Another tuning tip I've discussed on these Edelbrocks, you want to make sure that the vacuum pop-up springs for the pistons in here are set or selected correctly. Now usually these AVS2s are going to come with a middle of the range spring. I believe that's the orange one. And in most cases it's going to be just fine. If you've got a radical, ridiculous camshaft, you may need lighter springs. This engine, I'll bet it makes tons and tons of vacuum. We might actually want stronger springs. I'm going to start it up and lightly rev the engine. What you want to see is these pop up when you rev the engine and then go right back down when it comes to idle. Pop up, go down. What you do not want to ever see is them fluttering at idle. Essentially what you're doing is tuning the spring in there with a tune-up kit for the Edelbrock to account for the amount of vacuum that your engine makes at idle, and the main deciding factor for that is your camshaft. Yep, they popped right down, but they do jump up there. Now that's perfect. Again, your mileage may vary. If you've got a ridiculous camshaft, you may need lighter springs. Hey, don't forget to tighten those screws down when you're done. Because I didn't explicitly say this one time, someone thought I actually meant you should leave them loose. That's ridiculous. Don't do that. Anyway, adjusting the kickdown cable. Allan used this because none of the linkage was here. Of course, this was a slant 6 car. No piece of kickdown linkage off of a slant 6 car is going to do you any good with a V8. So what you can do is go hunt down factory stuff. There's either the 3-piece setup or the single rod that goes down to the transmission. If you want to know more on that, I actually have a video called the Big Chrysler Kickdown video, something like that. I've got all kinds of information in there on the different types of linkage and the adjustments. I also talk about these cables, which is what we've got in this car. Notice what I've just done is adjusted this, pulling the sheath rearward, effectively shortening this cable. What should happen is when I put this to full throttle, this cable should be pulled all the way tight. And we're still not quite there. So I'm going to twist it a little bit more. Probably right out to the end, actually. Just flood the crap out of it real quick. Very close. Yeah, it's literally going to the end. Anyway, repeat this process until you get full pull on the cable at full throttle, but definitely make sure the cable is not limiting the movement of the throttle. That's probably going to have to be close enough, actually. Allan had to customize the mounting for that for various reasons. It'll work, but it might not be aggressive enough. If we need to make more adjustment, we can actually loosen that and move that dealy bob that way on the cable as well. Yeah, even with this thing hung all the way over there, it didn't pull it fully. So I loosened that adjustment up. I moved the ferrule, or whatever you want to call that, barrel? This thingy. I moved that like 3/8 of an inch, readjusted here, and now we've got a correct setting. If you don't do this right, your Torque Flight automatic will not shift correctly. So, and there we are. The 360 is resplendent once again with Allan's custom painted, tasteful black Edelbrock air cleaner. And now we're ready for a test drive. We got to see what this thing can do. First, I need to explain a couple things. While this is not my car, Allan gave me full permission to test it thoroughly. However, this car still has the 7 1/4 axle. And if I test this thing right enough, well, we'll probably be putting a new axle in it. So I'm going to go test it, but we're not going to do any giant burnouts or anything like that. It actually goes farther than that too, because while under the hood this thing now has 360 V8 power, behind the fantastic small bolt 14-inch slot mags, it still has slant 6 9-inch 4-wheel drum stopping power, so that's not great. And of course, there's no bumper. So if I do go sliding into something, well, neither me, Lil Bit, or whatever I slide into is going to have a good time. So my point is, we're going to go for a test drive and try not to die. Checking the fuel gauge, and the fact that it's still sloshing like 8 seconds later tells me there's plenty in there. I love this faded factory cap. Oh yeah, now's probably a good time to mention this car is so far driven 4 blocks. Honk if parts fall off. Let's see how it starts with 20 degrees base timing. Oh, I flooded the crap out of it doing the kick down. Well, they're brakes. This car actually has power steering, which, like every other classic Chrysler product with power steering, is incredibly vague. Nice. Oh, the brakes. The brakes are not nice. What is wrong back there? When I say the brakes are terrible, I mean the brakes are terrible. Now, I happen to know the front right drum is actually damaged, and Allan managed to find a replacement, which is on the way. But that sounds like metal on metal, and it's pulsing terribly. The blinkers work, that's cool. I think we're about right on the kick down. Or a hair tight. Where's third? There's third, yeah, okay. So where I ended up is just a hair tight. I know the full throttle setting is correct, so likely what's happening is an issue with a ratio difference. There's a different amount of travel down there compared to what we've got up here on the throttle. Yeah, it just early kicked down to second too. It works this way, it's just kind of irritating. Anyway, how's the power? Very slight pinging at full throttle. We may have to take a couple degrees out of it. Oh, it's pretty good. Oh, it handles terrible. Perfect. And the brakes are not better at that speed. I've talked extensively about how classic Mopars handle pretty well compared to some things. Well, that's with the caveat that you really need some decent front end pieces. V8 torsion bars, a sway bar, even a factory one, but ideally a big gnarly tubular aftermarket unit. Those are just some of the things you need to make your A-body kind of drive all right. This car has none of those things. So needless to say, it's not amazing. It is fun. And I happen to know that there will be future upgrades, which is good. Brakes. What a good idea. Well, we made it and nobody died. You know, I think I could probably drop the idle speed a little bit more. It's not bad, I really like a low idle. Maybe that's just me. You know, this really is the perfect muscle car package. Again, barring the extra doors. We've got a healthy V8 under the hood. We've got terrible suspension and brakes. It handles like a stick of butter, but it sounds like that. And it is plenty fast to be fun. One of the things I have gone to extreme lengths with this channel to try and explain is that you don't need 500 horsepower to have a lot of fun in a car like this one. This 360, there's no way it makes 300 horses. I mean, 270, maybe? I don't know, but it's healthy, it's nice, it makes excellent torque. It is very fun. It'll chirp that one tire back there as much as you want. This engine is literally a porting job, headers, a cam, and a set of springs away from being exactly the 360 that's under the hood of Dale's Demon. And I've just about done wheelies with that thing. So my point is, a humble 360 like this in an A-body, excellent package. It's gonna be really interesting to gauge the audience response to this car. I know we're gonna have the, "That's not a muscle car," people in the crowd, but I actually think the majority of my viewers are gonna love and appreciate this thing, because it's perfect. It's something you can buy, it's something you can easily put together, and it's tons of fun. I guarantee you, all of the old dudes at the car show will be gathering around this thing, not the two matching orange 70 Chevelles. You may have noticed in a shot a bit ago when I was pointing at the 7 1/4, there's some rust in the trunk floor. In fact, Allan had to add some reinforcements to keep the fuel tank hanging in there, because when he started filling it, it started falling out. Then of course there's the rust here and the rust in the driver's footwell. Overall, it's really not that bad, but Allan is going to piece it together, turn it into a whole solid car. Eventually. For now, it's just going to be the perfect Dead Dodge Garage ratty daily driver, and I absolutely love it. I've always liked the 68 taillights. In addition to the detail, the shape of the back of the car, that trunk lid, all the contours, I definitely do prefer the gigantic trim panel that goes on the trunk, but beggars can't be choosers. This is fine. Frat song! Did I ever point out the bucket seats? Obviously, they're not factory. They match remarkably well. I mean, it's not what I would choose. I'd want a blue bench in here, but they're pretty nice. Relatively comfy. They do look roughly 70s period, and I appreciate that. It's better than a set of black leather BMW seats or whatever anyway. All right, time to limp it home and try not to crash into anything. I am pretty concerned about those brakes, so I was going to tell Allan to come get it and drive it home, but nah, we'll put it up on the ramp truck. I like these sedans. We've owned a few of them over the years. One of my daily drivers was a 318 3 on the tree stick 74 Dart sedan. That was a fun car. All right, you can have a little horsepower test for a treat. Oh yeah, buddy. Okay, that's the only time I've been scared going around that corner. That's kind of pushing it for this configuration as it stands now. We're good in the horsepower department. Let's deal with that other stuff I mentioned. In case you're thinking about doing this yourself, lawn mowing robot. 9-inch drums, not a good idea. They were barely adequate with the slant 6, and they certainly aren't adequate now. 10-inch drums are acceptable, but, you know, disc brakes exist. Apparently, there's even a small bolt pattern kit that you can get. It goes right on the drum brake spindles, and you can keep your old school 5-on-4 small bolt pattern wheels. Heater works. Controls don't. Shocking. I think that's the speedo cable. God. Yeah, this thing needs every brake. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this. I certainly did. It's just a great example of what you can do on the cheap. Great way to get into an old car and have awesome times. I just want to give another special thanks to Allan for feeding the channel with content. In fact, this isn't going to be his last contribution either, but we'll talk about that later. Allan's one of my gold members. That means he actually pays me every month. So I'm happy to give back and put a little bit of time into the Dart here. To Allan and all of my other members, thank you very much for helping to support me in this crazy endeavor. And if you're not a member, you're just here watching this video, you're helping me in my quest for global domination. And that means a lot. In any case, as ever, thank you very much for watching. And remember, if you can't dart it, 270 it. Hey, if you didn't like the Mordor 68A body, stick around because I got another really good one coming up. Okay, that's just way too easy with an automatic and no headers. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. There it goes.